Hey everybody, welcome to comics class. My name is Brandon Pallas and I'm here to teach you everything I know about the art of drawing comics. And today we're going to really start talking about drawing comics because up till now this has mostly been a drawing class. I've been teaching figure drawing, I've been teaching perspective drawing, but today we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about pages, which is the essence of comics. So we'll go ahead and get into that in just a second. First, like we always do, we're going to do a little bit of warm-ups. So let's start with just some, well, I guess it doesn't matter what color that is. Anyway, start with some simple C curves, just a long, sort of elegant little, just a simple single curve. Let's do a few of those, go the other way. Yeah, we do this every time. I talk about this a lot. If you guys have watched the videos, you know this is just a valuable way to train your hand, train your brain, I guess. Let's go this way, but especially your hand. Get your hand used to making these simple lines because C curves and S curves, which we'll do in a moment, make up almost every line you're ever going to use, as well as straight lines, of course. But any kind of curved line is usually a combination of C curves and S curves. So very valuable to spend some time just training ourselves to do them well. Just put them kind of all over the place here for a bit. Do some long, whoops, dragged out one of my palettes. I don't think you can see it on the screen. Do some long ones. You can do these so that they're barely even a curve, but just a little bit of a curve, like a straight line with a swing to it. All right, cool. That's plenty. Let's go ahead and do some S curves. Just like the letter S, go both ways. You can do little tight ones, long, flowing, elegant ones. And this line will show up in so many places. It'll show up kind of as the overall swing of a figure in your gesture drawing. It'll show up all throughout the figure in your figure drawings. The C curve as well, of course. And any curve, any line that seems to be more complicated than just an S curve or a C curve can be easily broken down into a combination of S curves and C curves. This one right here has got a little bit of a double curve. So as you can see, that's kind of an S curve with just a little C curve on the end of it. You know, you can do a long squiggle, but all breaks down to S curves and C curves eventually. All right. Anyway, that's plenty of that. We don't need to belabor that point, but valuable to do a little bit every time. So I usually like to focus the warm-ups on whatever it is we're going to be doing today. So today, since we're dealing with pages and panels, I just want to draw little boxes. Just 2D, you know, no dimensionality to it. Just freehand boxes, like a page or a panel. And, you know, obviously, when we're actually drawing comics, we're probably going to be using a ruler to draw out our panels or using you know, whatever straight line tools we have in any digital program we might be using. But this is a valuable thing. You're making your thumbnails or whatever. It's just, it's nice to be able to draw out a halfway decent little box. And, you know, these are not beautiful. They're not perfect, but like that one's pretty good. That one's pretty good. All of these are functional for just doing a quick sketch in. So we'll just do this for a little bit. Try some variety, some really long ones. One of the cool things about comics is we can make any kind of panel we want. You know, we can make them wide, we can make them tall, we can make them skinny, make them a perfect square. That's not a perfect square, but you know what I mean. So let's just do a few more of those. And really, you know, not only trying to get a straight line, but trying to get these nicely horizontal and vertical lines. Try to get it nice and square, or squared off anyway, you know, 90-degree angles. It helps to to do a longer, kind of a long line that uses the whole swing of your arm and goes quick, that's going to help you to get a straighter line. If you kind of go slowly, that's not too bad really, but there's a little bit of wobble to it, you know? So depending on the kind of energy you use as you draw the line, you're going to get different quality to it. So just a little more of that. We don't need to do a ton of this, but I really encourage you guys who are watching these videos to draw along with me in these warm-ups. It's not much, it's just a few minutes, but these exercises are going to make a big difference. I've actually seen this, some of this stuff, like especially the curved lines, the S curves and C curves, really like come through in the work of some of the people who've been following these videos, which is really cool. All right, just a few more. Do some little tiny ones. Try to get one last real nice one. Okay, whatever. That's fine. Who cares? Let's move on to the main event. Okay. So I'm just going to sketch out a page here. This is a standard-ish comics page. Maybe that's a little bit wider than a standard American comic page. They're actually a little bit on the slender side, but it doesn't matter because all of these principles are going to be valid no matter what kind of a page you're using, whether you're doing comic books with this like portrait format, or whether you're doing comic strips that are, like that. It's all the same principles. So let's jump right into it. Let's bring this page up. And the first thing we have to consider, the very first most important thing, is reading direction. Since I'm speaking English, and I assume you watching this understand English, English reads left to right and top to bottom. There are other languages in comics, most notably Japanese, that reads right to left. So when you read manga, you tend to read it the other direction, starting from, what we would think of as the back of the book. And all of this stuff works the same. If you, for whatever reason, want to do your comics in a right to left manga style, you certainly can. And all of these principles are going to be exactly the same. You just have to flip from left to right to left. So that means, very simply, that when we do our comics, say we have a standard sort of 6-panel page, that means that we're going to be panel 1, panel 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then obviously, if this was a manga, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Seems simple, but it's actually very important because we need to understand that when we put our panels down, we have to make sure that the reading order is clear. So for example, this is very obvious, right? Like obviously this is the very first panel. And then where do we go? We go to the right. So then we go to this panel. Then we go down to the next tier of panels, and we obviously go here, just like when we read lines in a book. It's super obvious and super simple. So there's no ambiguity here. But what if we have a page like this? What if we start with these two panels here stacked on top of each other? And then we have this wide or taller panel over here. Now we have a problem because we don't know if we go right to read that panel first or if we go down to read this panel first. So this is an area where we have to be very careful with how we design our page and our panels so that the reader doesn't get confused. Anytime, if you're reading the comic and you accidentally read the wrong panel, you're probably going to figure it out and you're going to go back. But by then, you've been kind of thrown out of the story. The spell has been broken. So it's very important that we design our pages so that the reading order is clear. Now, for instance, if we were to have almost the same page, but we stack these panels on the right here. Now this is no problem. It's very obvious that this is 1. We go over, there's 2. We go down, there's 3. That'll be 4. That'll be 5. Super clear, super obvious, no problem. So this right here, this is kind of a rule. Do not stack panels on the left. Or if you're doing manga style or whatever, don't stack panels on the right. But and you can break that rule. There are times when you can make it work, but you have to be very careful with the composition of your panels so that it makes it very clear that we need to read down rather than across, or to read across rather than down. If you're a beginner in this stuff and you don't have a strong command of composition and how to kind of push the reader's attention and to push the reader's eye around the page, I would say avoid this completely. This is good. This is fine. Check mark, I guess. Yeah. This is good. This is bad most of the time. So keep that in mind. Let's see. What else? Because this is pretty basic. I mean, putting panels together just as far as reading order, not very hard. Everybody should be able to grasp this pretty easily. Now there is something that you got to consider. Sometimes people like to use these kind of dynamic angled panels that kind of go all over the place like this, right? I personally, I like to do this in action scenes. I like to keep kind of, when things are quiet, I like to keep these, vertical and horizontal panel borders. And then when stuff starts getting crazy, I like to start letting these panels kind of slosh back and forth a little bit. I feel like it kind of adds to the intensity and the drama. But you do have to be careful with this because this can confuse the reading order as well. For example, let's see. This is probably not too bad because this is obviously 1. And then this panel kind of tips downward and kind of just flows downward. And we can probably surmise that we want to come to this panel as well. But there is a way where this kind of downward flow of this panel does kind of tend to direct our attention compositionally into this panel here. It's like you look and your eye kind of flows down here and it wants to go in here. This isn't a terrible example. I think most people would probably go to this panel first, but you never know. And so let's see, we go here, and then obviously we go there. And then this is really nice because we actually have this nice kind of gap to go through down to this next panel, which is a thing that I often like to do. Let's see. So up here, for instance, panel 2, panel 3, there's this little jump we have to make over to here. It's not a big deal. Nobody's going to be confused by that, but just on a compositional level, it can often be kind of nicer to be able to kind of come straight down into that panel as you're reading. And then obviously if it was like this, okay, now we have that little gap to jump again. So maybe we could do something like that if we wanted to keep that. But that's fiddly stuff. It's not super important. As you get more experienced with designing your panels, you'll figure out what you like, what you don't like, just what little things kind of satisfy your own sense of how this stuff is supposed to work. But anyway, back to these sort of diagonalized sloshing panels. This page is fine, but let's try to make one that wouldn't be fine. Okay. So let's see. Let's say I have a panel like this. This is kind of just getting crazy to begin with. This is not too bad. Okay, I have an example. I saw someone do this recently. They did a panel like this with this kind of inverted triangle in the middle. So obviously this is panel 1. And I think maybe there was, I don't know if there was a gap there or not. if there's a gap here, we now have some kind of ambiguity over whether that's panel 2 or whether that is panel 2. If there's no gap here, if this comes right from the corner, or even like even from a little further down, now this very obviously becomes panel 2. Obviously, we're not going to like jump right over this whole space and go to panel, to call that panel 2. This is obviously, well, this is probably panel 3. But it's a little ambiguous because we've got this panel here taking up this whole space, kind of separating these. And now we have to actually go backward. We have to go right to left to go to this panel. And we might, especially if we're looking at a big page, like if this is a very small page and you can see it all at once easily, you might obviously go to this panel. But if it's big enough that you don't have the whole page in your visual field, you might just miss this panel and go straight to that panel. And again, this is almost certainly not the right answer. So let's see. So yeah, just, ideally keep your panel layouts relatively simple. Don't stack your panels on the left like this. Make sure that there's always a clear reading order. Here's another example. Let's say this is like a little comic strip, and we put these stacked panels in the middle, so that we got 1, we got 2, and then is that 3 or is that 3? Same as up here. I think that works fine. But here's another example of something that might be a little bit ambiguous. It's probably fine. Most people are probably going to go, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But it's possible that since we've got this downward sort of, reading order, a person might go down into that next panel. Especially if this line continues straight down, it gives us this sense of these 3 panels all being together. So maybe if I were to do a layout like this, I would probably try to put this line, whoops, a little over here or a little over here, just to make it clear that this is not a 3-panel, arrangement here. That this, once we get down past this stuff, past these 2 panels, we're onto a new tier, and we're going to start from the left again. Let's see. Yeah, that's probably about it for now. For that stuff, just remember you're reading right to left, top to bottom, and just remember to design your panels so that it is always clear which panel is the next panel to read. And to do that, we just rely on our left to right, top to bottom. If you're doing these kind of diagonal panels, if I did a whole page of diagonal panels like this is great because obviously this is 1, this is 2, 3, 4. But if we go the other way, well, now this is tough. Like, is that 1? I don't know. Like this is the panel that has the top, that's the uppermost and leftmost. So where does that leave us now? 2, 3, 2. I don't even know about that. What? So just a simple thing of just like changing the directions of these lines can completely screw up our panel arrangement there. So just keep that stuff in mind. It's not that complicated, really. You may make some mistakes, but after a while, you'll get used to it, and you'll develop a strong, simple sense of what panel arrangements work and which ones don't. Okay, so let's see. Now let's talk about panel borders. Not a whole lot to talk about here, but obviously, I've just been drawing lines to separate these panels. But typically what we have is we have a whole page that has what's called gutters between the panels. So the panels are actually like this, right? and there's space between them. Often just like white space, but sometimes they'll color it another color, they make it black or whatever. So we do have this gutter space between the panels. And then you can even do things like you can leave out a panel border. So we could have, drawings in here, and then we could have a drawing that fills up this whole area and even kind of runs underneath some of the other panels, etc. We could do a little inset panel here. We can do an inset panel here. We can have a panel inside. Although that would be an ambiguous one. I wouldn't want to put one there. Maybe over here, because then it becomes clear that you read this before you read this. But if we had an inset panel up here, do we go there first, or do we go here? Because it's on the right, so it becomes confusing. Yeah. So this is your page. It has the excuse me. It has the gutters, usually like a kind of a wider. You know what? I'm actually. Well, no, never mind. Yeah, never mind. All right. So typically when you design a page, there's kind of a wide area around the outside, and there's what's called a bleed, and there's what's called a safe area. So like there's an area, a small area around the outside, and this is if you're doing print. And I'm not going to go into like all the details of this, but just so you know, it's a thing. If you're doing print, there's a small area around the outside, maybe like a 1/4 inch or even less, that because printers are not, or the machines that like print and cut the pages are not entirely reliable, there's a small area that we can't be certain isn't going to get cut off. So that's called the bleed. And you just, if something is absolutely has to be on the page, don't put it there because it might get cut off as these pages get slightly misaligned during the printing process. There's also what's called the safe area, which is inside of that. And this is this is where you want to make sure all your word balloons are within there, because if your word balloons come outside of that, now they're at more risk of starting to get cut off. So all your text, all your dialogue, etc., should all kind of stay within what's called the safe area. And like I said, I'm not going to go there. There are specifications that might vary by what printing format you're using, what page size, and you can kind of look into all that yourself if this becomes important to you. But I just want you to know there's the bleed, which is the area that can possibly get cut off accidentally. So don't put anything there that you don't absolutely want to, that you absolutely need to show up on the page. And then there's the safe area, which is even further inside the page, and you want to keep all of your text within that area. Sometimes we have pages, this page here has this gutter that goes around the whole page, just this white border area. But you might have, I doodled some stuff in this panel here. We might have this stuff coming underneath whatever this is, like the whole page. And what we would call this a full bleed page, where the artwork extends all the way to the bleed. And we would even like expect some of it to get cut off, but we just draw it out so that it extends underneath all the other panels or over whatever. If it could just be one whole big splash page with no panels, and everything extends all the way to the edges. And we don't have any of these like white borders or colored borders or whatever. And that's called full bleed. Let's see. One more little thing about panels is that, and pages, is that there really is no true standard for the width of your gutters. That's kind of up to you. So that's something you can kind of play with stylistically. You can change the width of the gutters between panels if you want to maybe like mess with the sense of time passing between panels and stuff like that. One thing that that's kind of important to me is the relative spacing between vertical and horizontal gutters. So this is something you'll see more prominently in manga than in like Western comics. But in manga, for instance, they tend to use very narrow gutters between panels horizontally. So you'll have these little narrow gutters here, but then there will be fairly wide gutters between, vertically between panels. So, again, it would be like these narrow little gaps between the panels horizontally, but this wider gap between them vertically. And there's really no reason for that other than it just kind of looks better. It gives a little more visual variety to the page rather than having all the gutters being kind of the same width vertically and horizontally. This is a crappy doodles are obviously not quite, but you know what I mean. It just creates a little more visual interest, a little more just aesthetics, but it's totally up to you. If you wanted to do wide gaps between your horizontal panels and little narrow vertical gaps, you certainly could. You can play with all of this stuff however you want. I just want to let you guys know that it's there. Let's see, what else do I have? You know what? I think that might be about it for today. As we go forward, talking about the actual nuts and bolts of doing comics pages and putting together stories, we're going to talk a lot about a lot of stuff, a lot of visual storytelling considerations. We're going to talk a lot about composition. But as far as just the basic anatomy of a page, yeah, I think that will about cover it. So just quick review. Unless you're doing, Japanese style or whatever, or maybe I'm trying to think of like where are the big comics markets. We've got the Western, North American comic market. We've got the Franco-Belgian market. Obviously, these all use left to right because Western languages all read left to right, top to bottom. Japanese reads right to left. I know Korea has a lot of comics. I'm not sure if they read right to left. But in any case, if you're working in English, you're probably working left to right. You can work right to left if you really want to, if you really want to like be in that manga space. But yeah, just left to right, try to avoid this sort of thing, these stacking panels on the left, unless you have a really good reason to do it. You probably should avoid it until you have a very strong command of directing the eye around the page. When you use angled panels, which is totally fine, I think they're a great tool for bringing dynamics into your page, but be very careful that it's not obscuring the reading order. Just make sure that the reading order is clear. Let's see. When you do your panels, you can drop out panels and just draw something. Let me show another example here. This is something I feel like you used to see this in the Marvel comics and stuff I would read growing up. I would see this a lot, where there would be all of these panels that are kind of sitting, within the page, and they've got full backgrounds and everything, full scenes, and then you might have this panel dropped out, and just in the open space, you might just have a couple of characters just kind of standing in this white void here. Maybe they got a shadow, and it's kind of a cool effect you can play with. There's so many cool things you can do with the just with the real estate of the page. Like comics are different from any other medium in that I'm kind of getting into storyboarding myself now, and it's really interesting dealing with the space of the screen now instead of the space of the page. On one hand, it's a lot easier because thinking about your panels, thinking about how you compose your panels, how one panel kind of pushes into the next panel, it's a lot of cognitive effort that is not present when you're just dealing with the screen. Although obviously with the screen, you're directing the viewer's eye around the screen in different ways. The comics are pretty unique in this way and pretty cool. Okay, so that's your borders. That's, you can drop out your borders. Remember that there's the bleed, which is the narrow area around the edge that might get cut off. There's also the safe area, which is a smaller area within the page that you want to keep all your text within, because I guess, I don't know why. If something's in the bleed and it might get cut off, but like, I guess this other stuff also might get cut off if things go really wrong. I'm not really sure why, but I know that they call it the safe area and you're supposed to keep all your text within there. And then when it comes to your actual panel borders and the width of your panel borders, you can play with that. You can, maybe you can, thicken up. Well, I said width of the panel borders. I meant the width of the gutters between the panel borders. But, you can also play with the panel borders themselves. You can put a bold border on that one. Maybe I do one over here that's got a weird, like, squiggly border. And these are all going to impart some particular feeling to your panel. This sort of stuff is not, there's no real standardized interpretations of this. A lot of this is just going to be up to feel and like what you think is going to work for the particular moment. Yeah, I guess that's about it for the very basics of pages. And next time we'll continue on with this with the actual, putting the actual pages together, getting the actual story told. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you find this helpful, and I will see you next time. Bye.